Hey everybody, it's Josh with the Lead Ministry Podcast. Now, hey, listen, before we jump into the podcast, I want to let you know of some exciting news. I have a brand new course that I'm getting ready to release entitled Lead Conflict. That's right, Lead Conflict. Listen, if you have been in ministry for any length of time, you understand that conflict is a part of our role. We want to teach you how to minimize the frequency and likelihood of conflict taking place, but we also want to help you strategize how to manage the conflict that does come your way. Now, again, as you would expect, this is a full-length course. Tons of downloads, tons of fantastic strategies. Again, the new Lead Conflict course is coming your way, and we're excited to do this little podcast series that kind of teases out some of the concepts that we're going to be releasing through this brand new course, Lead Conflict. All right, gang, let's jump into the podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast. We're grateful that you're here. You know, we try to tackle topics that are relevant to you, relevant to your life, and relevant to your ministry. We're going to jump into a topic about conflict, a little mini series about conflict. If you've been in the local church for any length of time or any ministry context for that matter, you know that conflict is a general inevitability. It's the way it is. But the thing is that we don't have to be fools and we don't have to be naive about conflict. So we're excited about that. Hey, quick thing here. It's been a little bit. Just want to give you a little quick shot of the home studio. If you are watching on YouTube, you can see where I am personally recording today. And so it's always kind of fun to just give you guys a little bit of a background and a little bit of a behind the scenes thing. Well, again, just very, very, very grateful you're here. Hey, listen, if you are not a subscriber to the YouTube channel, I really want to encourage you. Jump on YouTube, look us up, click subscribe. These are not just audio recordings, they're also recorded on video. So a lot of people, they've appreciated, and we're seeing our little subscriptions rise from good people just like you. Well, we're grateful that our friend Bill Van Kirk is here. Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you too, yeah.
Yeah, man. Always good to have you. I miss you, man. We haven't done this for a bit.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, we've been, of course, releasing all the episodes, but you and I haven't recorded anything for a while. So
we haven't. Yeah.
It's like I need my podcast therapy.
You know, it is fun. And what I hope people, I really do hope that people pick up on the idea that we're actually having fun, because it is fun. I'm having a good time doing this.
Yeah, ministry and all that surrounds it is one of my favorite things to talk about. So,
yeah. And you know, Bill, God bless you, man. We kind of have fun doing this together. We're kind of, I am realizing what a gift you are to myself and what you are, you know, to all the audience members out there. Well, let's jump in to make this thing happen. Of course, we're here on the Lead Ministry Podcast. We're talking about all of the things, the panorama of things that you may run into. Our last series was talking about success stories. That's awesome. But let's counterbalance that with the realities of ministry conflict. Happens, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. I mean, anytime you involve people in anything, you're going to get conflict.
That's right. And so here's what I tell people as I do ministry coaching all over the country, is I tell people, hey, sit down. I want you to brace yourself. And they're like, oh man, what do we got here? And I say, if you are experiencing conflict in ministry, pause for effect. You are experiencing a good case of the normals. And they're like, it's kind of a joke, right? I kind of build it up. If you're experiencing conflict, you're normal, right?
Yeah. And that's so important, because I think you have to learn that in ministry.
Yes.
Because there is this idea that when you jump into ministry, you go, hey, this is God's church, right? Like these are Christians, they're brothers and sisters in Christ. Like you almost sometimes have this unrealistic expectation that everything's going to be Disneyland, rainbows, and Skittles.
Yes. And we think that that our attempts at our own personal godliness are somehow going to skirt the issue of conflict. That all of a sudden, like, if I just do it right, we're going to have no conflict. And that's just not a reality.
Right. It's an inevitability.
It is an inevitability. I don't know, Bill, if you're a fan of the movie The Matrix. It's one of my all-time favorites. And at the very end, the bad guy picks up Neo, which is Keanu Reeves, picks his head up as a train is just impending. And he says, "That, Mr. Anderson, is the sound of inevitability."
That's awesome. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. This is the sound of inevitability. And so conflict, this is the sound, this is the podcast of inevitability. Now, on the podcast, we seek to define it. Pretty straightforward. We seek to develop it. That's number 2. And we seek to do it. Now, hear me out real quick. I'm an educator at heart. I try to communicate in a way that's going to stick in the human brain of the listeners and the viewers on YouTube. So by defining it, we have bucket number 1. By developing it, take it deeper, we got bucket number 2. And then how do we go about doing this differently? That's bucket number 3. So from a mental scaffolding standpoint, we're setting up the podcast to try to make information go into some categories so that you can have some easier recall. Okay, so number 1, let's define this. What is the definition of conflict? Pretty straightforward. Conflict: a serious disagreement or argument, typically protracted. Now, I like that word protracted. I don't like it when conflict in my life is protracted. But for those of you who aren't the word of the day people, something that's protracted is just elongated, right? So you've got a serious disagreement or argument that takes some time. Oof.
Right. So that would be like different than a squabble. Right.
Okay. So conflict is different. A squabble is like a small storm that is, downpour quick, and then the sunshine and rainbow comes out. That's a squabble. Good word, Bill. But a conflict is kind of like, we're going to be in this downpour for a number of hours.
Right. And it's going to take a little bit more intentionality and effort to pull ourselves out of it.
I would agree. So conflict is a serious disagreement or an argument typically protracted. Now, I hadn't planned on sharing this, but I think it's important. A good buddy of mine, and he is, now you got to say, sometimes the source is important to what they said. And this guy is a lawyer who is in the courtroom. So he's not just a lawyer who's crunching some stuff and sending things out and sending contracts for some company. No, he is a courtroom lawyer. He's doing direct litigation. And he and I and his son were hanging out. And he's a baller, man. He is a big dog. And he said there are 2 types of people, just like there is a cow and there is a buffalo. A cow, when it sees the storm, it begins to run away from the storm. Now watch this. The storm is fast enough that it actually overtakes the cow, and then the cow is running in and with the storm. And so the cow, thinking that it's heading towards safety, actually spends more time in the storm because it's running away from it. The storm is faster than it. However, he said the buffalo is different. The buffalo runs into the storm, and so therefore the time that it's in the storm is significantly less. And so here's what I want to say as we're talking about this little series about conflict. Now, I'm not saying be a guy who's just hungry for conflict and looking for a fight, but don't run from conflict. You need to actually take it on and head it on. We will talk about that in a subsequent episode, but we got this definition, and I think that conflict in ministry, don't run from it. Now let's talk about the opposites. Often when we talk about a definition, it's easy to gloss over what would be the antonyms. So the opposite of conflict would be a truce. So you have 2 people originally who are opposite of one another, and then you kind of come to the middle, you form a truce. Another opposite of conflict would be agreement as opposed to disagreement. An opposite of conflict would be peace where there was disharmony, where there was frustration or antagonism, there's now peace. So what do you think, Bill? This is a tough one, isn't it?
It is a tough one. And I think, it's so hard in ministry when you are in a season of conflict, because you do have that expectation and the biblical mandates for unity and those sorts of things and peace, right? Like God actually calls us, Jesus calls us to be peacemakers.
Yes.
Right. So when we are in conflict, it is kind of the antithesis of where we want to be.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, when we're in a conflict and we know that the biblical hope and mandate and hope is unity, when we're not there, we think we're doing something egregiously wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's what you said is so hard, because we have the biblical mandate, we have reality, which is we're in conflict, and it can get really, really, really dicey. So that leads us to, what is the reality about conflict in the church? So we kind of defined it. Now we're going to develop it. This is bucket number 2. What is the reality about conflict in the church? Well, I have this really comical kind of statement. It says, church ministry would be great if it wasn't for all these people.
Can I tell you, Josh, that literally everyone I know in ministry has said this quote at one point or another.
True.
And it's kind of, it's one of those quotes that is tongue in cheek, right? Like,
it's tongue in cheek.
We know that ministry is 2 people.
And 4 people.
Also, and 4 people. And yet we also know that people are also the cause of all the conflicts.
That's it. And I'll say this, ministry is 2 people, it's 4 people, and it's with people.
Yes.
So,
yes, absolutely.
And here's the funny thing as well. I know it's tongue in cheek. I get that, but there's a lot of truth to the idea that ministry would be great if it wasn't for all these people. But let me throw this in. I am one of those people.
Yes, absolutely.
I bring my opinions. I bring my crabbiness. I bring my historical baggage that I'm laying, and superimposing upon the people that I meet. So ministry would be great if it wasn't for all these people. We get it. Ministry is for people. I want to be with people. I want to be for people, but it's a challenge. Now, Bill, I'm gonna take us down a potentially dangerous road, and I don't want this to. This can go one of 2 ways in the minds of the listeners. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll tease that out in just a minute. Now that I've got everybody's attention, that I could actually blow up this podcast and make it like the worst one ever. Do you know that little book? I think it's by Dr. Seuss, and they always give it out to people who are graduating, right?
Yeah.
It's the places you will go. And it's, it's this book about whatever. It's like these new beginnings, the places that you'll go. Okay. That's great, but I'm going to kind of change that and hijack that a little and call this next thing, the people you will meet. And we're going to throw out some different personalities, some different people. And I am going to throw out there from the get-go, I'm intentionally being slightly cynical, but okay. Help me with the dangers here, Bill. Where could this, again, I'm building it up, but people will understand once we start getting to the hypothetical names, the people that you will meet. Where could we go bad with this?
Well, I think this is going to naturally end up, for some people, they're going to hear these different personalities or different characteristics of people, and they're going to think of their coworkers, or they're going to think of people they have to deal with. That volunteer. In ministry. And the tendency for all of us, because this is just reality, the tendency for all of us is to think that we're none of these things and everyone else is the problem.
That's right.
And so, like, as we approach this next piece and we kind of go through these, you have to take on a certain level of humility.
Yep.
And realize that, yes, people act this way, but people are not defined by these things.
Bingo. Bingo.
Yeah.
And so I think the most important thing, yes, we're taking this play, this funny thing on Oh, the Places You Will Go, that book by Dr. Seuss. We're going to talk about Oh, the People That You'll Meet. And in ministry, you're going to have Donna the Dominator.
Oh, yeah.
And, and right out of the get-go, I got to say, we could put in here Josh the Dominator. I'm just going to lead with humility that I have an idea of where I want to go, and I am pretty headstrong, and I will sometimes I will work super hard to get where I want to go, and there can be some wounded bodies behind me. Okay.
Right.
I can be a very domineering personality that has its advantages, but it has its disadvantages. So again, we're going to walk into these rather loosely. So it's a little bit of fun, but just to say, ministry's complex. That's the whole point of this. Okay. Oh, the people that you meet, you got power hungry Paul, this hypothetical person who is just, he wants, he's not satisfied with his job as a mid-level executive at Shell Oil, and he wants to have power somewhere in his life, and he wants to be a decision maker, and he wants to be kind of a big dog at the church. And so he's a little bit power hungry.
Yeah. And you can tell this person because, you can kind of figure out when somebody is acting in this mode by seeing it through the lens of everything they do is designed in order to get more power or influence over the processes or the people.
Right. And they're hungry for some semblance of authority. Like I get that. So you got power hungry Paul. Another one, you got Chuck the Challenger. And this could also be Charlene the Challenger, right? And so it's the person you're in a meeting, you're seeking to make decisions, and they start pointing out, hang on, and they kind of go toe to toe with you. And there's a place for this, but this can breed conflict. By the way, every one of these has an opportunity for sparks to fly with friction.
Yes, absolutely.
Doug, the decision dissenter. Ooh, Douglas. And I'm totally for dissenting voices within the confines of the room. But there are times where good old Doug, the decision dissenter, he will have his dissenting view in the meeting, and then he'll take that out of the meeting and he'll dissent publicly. Less good, less positive. And so right away, you got conflict on your hands. How about Nancy the naysayer? Have you ever interacted with a naysayer? Everything is, I don't think.
Yeah. Everything is negative. Every single thing you do. Yes.
Yeah. And that can wear on a person. Now, I have to say that some of these personalities I have learned over the years, even though they can breed conflict, I want to view them as not as a person of conflict, but possibly a counterbalance.
Yes.
And so naysayer Nancy, if she's on my team, I can either be super frustrated at her, or I can say, okay, she has an opposing opinion. How can she be an advantage to us? Like, rather than writing her off as Nancy the naysayer, let's all just be a hater on Nancy, she can actually, because of her naysaying view, she can cause light to be shined on a half-baked idea and get it fully baked with her naysaying. Fair?
Yeah. And sometimes it's training those people where you say, hey, I notice in meetings, you're really good at finding the holes. What I need you to do in our meetings is, as we find the holes, I need you to be positive about the solutions.
Yes. And I've even said to one person, who we'll just call her Nancy. I won't say her real name, but the thing is that I said, hey, we need you to hold out on your Nancy naysaying until 3/4 of the way through the meeting, because early in the meeting, we're in this blue sky open moment. We're dreaming. And what we need your wet blanket, but we don't need it during the first 3/4 of the meeting. Can you wait? When you see a hole, when you see something wrong, don't shoot it right away. We need you, but we need you later in the meeting. Can we have this agreement? And please write it down. We want what you're naysaying about, but we can't have it like within the first 18 seconds of an idea being birthed. Don't kill the baby right away, Nancy.
Right. Absolutely. And not only that, but once we've made the decision and we're together as a team, you need to cease being the naysayer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here we got another one. Sally the cynic. Oh, drama. Yep. Mm-hmm. Cynical Sally. And, cynicism is, I got to say, this next one is very interesting. Cynics truly are these individuals who used to be the most optimistic. Okay. Cynics are beat down optimists. Right? A cynic is somebody who's like, they had super big dreams that something great could happen, and they were a huge optimist. And over time, they just got reality kept slamming into their optimism. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, well, that'll never happen. I mean,
that is so true. I can't tell you how true that is, because you're familiar with Strength Finders.
Big time.
One of my strengths is positivity. Mm-hmm. But for every strength, there is a basement, right? And so positivity's basement is cynicism. Because it's like, I will be positive up until the point where you've beat me down enough that I can't be. And then it's burn the world down.
That's it. Okay. So if you scratch a cynic, you're going to find a raging optimist who has felt the pain of the world smashing them.
Yes, absolutely. I've been there.
Yeah,
I've definitely been there.
I have too, actually. And all of a sudden, a cynic basically goes, nope, that ain't never going to work. And so, but then, drama, drum roll, please. Now you've got Austin, the alliance maker. And often, Austin is making alliances secretly with other people, sometimes in opposition to you. I can kind of call this, what's this thing on a boat when you have all of the people creating a mutiny? It's Austin, the alliance maker, and his friend, Michael, Mr. Mutiny. You know what I mean?
It's so true. Yeah.
And that can be very difficult because we want community. But I got to tell you, Bill, I have found in multiple different contexts that community can be built around negativity and hating. It's a really simple community builder. It's a terrible community builder. It is toxic. But I'll say this I first learned this as a teacher. I was a teacher and I learned very quickly, number one, I was never going to go to the teacher's lounge. That was a bummer. But I was never going to go to that particular lunchroom, like where the teachers ate lunch, because there was this instantaneous, you could get in with these people and you could have these friends very, very, very quickly. But the way that you made friends with them is that you hated the administration. You hated the latest decision, and you all just groaned and griped. And that was a means of relational glue. That's so dangerous. You can bond so fast around negativity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is a dynamic that plays out in all spheres of life. And it kind of looks like, it's the meeting after the meeting where we all shook our heads, yes, in the meeting. And then right after you go, can you believe what they decided?
Yes. And then all of a sudden, you and that other person, you just struck a bond. Yep. But it's a bond based in dissension. It's not a bond based in unity. And the funny thing is, those bonds happen extremely fast, but they're extremely dangerous. So you got Austin, the alliance maker, and Mike, Mr. Mutiny. But then you have as opposed to the cynic or the Debbie, the downer, the doubter, this will never work. You got Irene, the overt idea generator.
Oh, yes. I think we've all had people like this on our team where it's like, you're an idea factory and 99% of the ideas are not feasible. And
so then that can create conflict in some interesting ways because number one, you don't want to shut Irene down. Mm-mm. You want to give her some space, but somebody else on the team is like, would she just shut up? And so this can cause conflict. Now, I got to say, I am an idea factory. And as I have matured as a human, I now know that not every idea needs to be floated. But I got to say, for those of you who are dealing with an Irene or maybe a Josh, I am an idea factory. You have to understand, I remember long ago, my wife and I, when we were first married, she was like, we were driving down the road and I said, oh man, I love those bushes around that house. And she said, I hate those bushes. And I was like, what? And then I would say like, oh dude, check out that planter at that house. I despise that planter. Well, it didn't take very long before I was like, hey, time out real quick. Why such a visceral response? What do we have here? And she said, well, I'm afraid that if I say I like that you're going to want to implement that at our house. And I said, oh, yeah, great. I get it. So I need to preface this with, I don't want to do this. I'm just observing that.
Right. Yes.
Because my team at church one time, all of a sudden I was like, oh my word, I just saw this really cool ministry that is all based around puppets, and they all love them. They were right, but they all did their own alliance after the meeting where they're like, we've got to do any and everything to kill the puppet idea. I didn't want to do the puppet idea, but by even floating it. So sometimes I think I have needed to allow my team to understand that not every idea I'm wanting to do, right?
Right. And the more influence you have over people, the more you have to be careful as a leader about those ideas, because people will think, well,
ship's left the station. Here we go.
Yes, we got to get on board with all this, so.
Yes. Well, here's another one. Connie the control freak. And this also could be Charlie control freak, but I got to say, it's typically more Connie. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true honesty.
But the thing is that the control freak team member can be a huge advantage. Mm-hmm. It really can be a huge advantage because all of a sudden every I is dotted, every T is crossed. The things that need bold-faced are bold-faced. The things that need underlined are underlined. So the thing is that every one of these people in the correct context can be a humongous benefit to us as leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a long time as a leader to realize that. Because, we have these different characters and sometimes you just put them in this bucket and you're like, they're a control freak. I can't work with them. They're driving me insane. But then when you step back and you realize there's a strength to the control freak.
There is.
There's somebody who can manage all of the details when you can't is a huge strength.
It is. And so it comes down, Bill, part of managing people is growing my own capacity to deal with people different than me.
Yes.
That's
amen.
part of it. Okay. Sorry. We got to go there. We got Anal Andrew. And Anal Andrew is just really high strung, is really freaked out, carries a palpable sense of anxiety. And it's like, it's like, chill, man. It's good. And Andrew, when I say to an Anal Andrew, chill, man, it's okay, that causes him to double down. You know what I mean? He's like, it is not okay. So again, these are just some of the random people that we'll meet. Oh, the people you'll meet. Here's one of my least favorite. William, we've never done it that way before.
Yeah. Which is funny. So my full name is William. People call me Bill. But I am so opposite of this in every single way. Like if somebody said to me, we can't do it because we've never done that way before, I go, that's the reason to do it.
That's where I'm at too. So like historical like frameworks, or well, we've always done it this way. That is a good reason to change it up.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, now quick caveat to the William, we've never done it that way. Quick balance to that. The quick balance to me and you, Bill, who are thinking in our minds, well, that's a great reason to change it, right? Let's blow it up. Right. Let's blow it up. One quick balance to that is, this sounds like it's out of the book of Proverbs. It's not, but it's a good proverbial type statement. Understand why an ancient boundary stone hath been laid before moving it. Do not move an ancient boundary stone until you know why it's been laid.
Yes.
As an example, you walk in, you're the new director of whatever ministry at this brand new church, and you look at that wall and you're like, why the heck is that thing painted? Like, who painted that? Well, you just quite possibly stepped in a bear trap, because the person that you're saying it to, it could have been their wife, and she could really like be an aspiring artist, and she decided to do that mural. So the better question to avoid conflict is, hey, can you tell me about that wall?
Yes. Get the information first.
Get the information first. Okay. Yeah. That's a freebie for all of you in podcast land. We got Donnie, the decision doubter, and his wife, Debbie, the downer. We'll move on. Charlie, the change hater, and his friend, Status Quo Steve. This is, again, these are cousins to William. We've never done it that way. Hey, let's not, Charlie. I hate change. By the way, Bill, did you know that statistics say that 90% of people dislike change and the other 10% hate it absolutely?
Yes. Yeah, I'm kind of a freak. That way, because I actually like change.
Yeah, I do too.
I enjoy. I have to be careful sometimes, because I'll change things that don't need to be changed just because I want change.
Yes, and we could call that Eric the erratic. Okay, we'll move on. Okay,
I like that. That was on the fly.
Yes, it was. But I do want to throw in one more, and I've actually dealt with this. This one's a really sneaky one. This person, the people you'll meet. This is displaced Donna. It's displaced Diana. And I want to talk about displaced Diana for a moment. And this is one this is a very incognito conflict awaiting to blow up in your face. So all of a sudden, displaced Diana, she was figuratively waiting by the phone for the last 8.5 months as this position was vacant, and she has been serving in this area for the last 18 years. She has been trying but not voicing that she would like to have this position. She's figuratively waiting by the phone, hoping that the church leaders will call her to now become the new director of fill in the blank, the director of women's ministry, the director of children's ministry. And all of a sudden you now get the call and you are brought in as that new director, and she's just been displaced. And all of a sudden she has ultra sour grapes. And I've watched this so many times where all of a sudden I'm in a coaching situation and I'm asking questions of someone and they're experiencing some weird conflict and like, I just can't figure out what's happened. And I said, okay, tell me more about Diana. And they're like, well, this, and this. I'm like, has she been there a while? Yes. Do you think that Diana really kind of in a sense wanted your job and they ended up giving it to you and they're like, oh, that's it. Now, Bill, have you ever experienced a situation like a displaced Diana?
Yes, absolutely. I have. Yeah. And it's such a hard situation because that's actually one of those conflicts where I think you actually have to address it. Like you can't just be like, it won't just get better on its own over time. You have to like kind of, make headway on building trust with them and having the conversation. Look, I know that this is something you desired. You wanted to be in this position that I'm in now. Let's talk about this.
Yep. Okay, so again, we're talking about all of these people. And the funny thing is, these are often the personality types, though though it's a little tongue in cheek, though we're kind of hyperbolizing these, right? And we're making kind of maybe, like a trope, right? We're making kind of a trope about these people, but they are people that we interact with. We can have conflict with these people. But number 3, okay, so we defined it. Conflict is, we kind of developed it. Here's some of the personalities you might meet. But now let's talk about this third bucket as we land the plane, where to begin. Well, I see there are 2 pathways of conflict resolution. 2 pathways. Conflict pathway number 1 is to intelligently reduce the likelihood of conflict. We'll come back to that in a minute. Pathway number 2 is intelligently manage conflict that you know is going to come our way. Let's go back. Number 1, intelligently reduce the likelihood of conflict. Number 2 is manage intelligently the conflict that you know is going to come your way. So hear me out. A fool just doesn't have their ship tied down. They don't have the batten down the hatches. There's a lot of battening down of the hatches. We can tie some stuff down. We can be an intelligent leader that is going to reduce the likelihood of conflict. In other words, if you have an event and you don't have all of your poo pulled together and you don't have all of your ideas tied down and you're going into the event a little bit willy-nilly, you're begging for conflict, Bill.
Yes, absolutely.
So systems alone and being a really intelligent, ministry operator, that is going to reduce the likelihood of conflict happening. But if you're some random, you're begging for conflict if you're not an organized person in ministry. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think we can create environments that are conducive to more conflict, and we can create environments that are conducive to less conflict.
That's right.
And sometimes you have to step back and look at what is the environment. Sometimes it's not the people. Sometimes it's I've created an environment for conflict to thrive.
Exactly. And by the way, having some of those unique players, right? Some of these tropes that if you can bring them onto your team, if you can build a team with different personalities, you can actually reduce the likelihood of conflict leveraging their idiosyncrasies.
Yes, absolutely.
Now hear me out. We want to, number 1, reduce conflict. Don't think, however, that by reducing conflict, you are going to eliminate conflict.
No.
Doesn't happen. You are living in a fool's world. You are living, what do we want? What does it say? Jesus says, pray this way, on earth as it is in heaven. Well, we ain't there yet, team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we can do a lot of things to reduce conflict, but you got to understand you're going to have conflict, and your ability to manage conflict is going to be super, super important. Well, we're going to close up this particular episode. We are going to come right back. We're going to have this little mini series on conflict. I think it's going to be very powerful, but here is a fact. And I'll end with this quote. Any fool can create conflict. It takes an emotional genius to broker peace. I'm going to say it again. Any fool can create conflict. That's a pretty natural thing, right? For us to create conflict. But it takes an emotional genius to broker peace. You have to be an emotional genius to manage some of these different and random personalities that we're dealing with in order to achieve a great kingdom end. You got to be an emotional genius. And by the way, that's what this series is about, is upping our game. Listen, Bill, over the years, as we've done this podcast, we have focused big time on pathway number 1. Here's how to reduce the likelihood of conflict. Okay. Almost all that I do, all of the courses, it is saying, hey, 90% of the drama can be lowered if you just are organized. If you just have a system, you can actually stop a lot of that stuff. That's great. That's the majority of what my work is to the kingdom. That's my gift. That's my contribution. But I want to focus now for this little series here on managing conflict that we know is going to come our way. Pretty good stuff, huh, Bill?
Oh, I'm excited for this. I think it'll be good. And here's the thing. No matter how far you've gone in ministry, no matter how many times you've managed conflict, this is a skill set that you can improve on. It's a skill set that you can build into your toolbox. And so I think it's so important that we're talking about this.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. Gang, this has been fun. I'm very, 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 very grateful that you guys are here. This is just one more episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast. We'd love for you to subscribe on all of your podcast channels. We'd love for you to join us on YouTube. But we will be back next week with some more opportunities for conflict resolution. And this has been the Lead Ministry Podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in to today's podcast. I hope that it was valuable to you. Before you close this out, I want to remind you that we have a brand new course entitled Lead Conflict. That's right. As you know, conflict is a good case of the inevitabilities, and we want to help you to successfully navigate and manage conflict in your ministry role. So be on the lookout for this brand new course that is going to be dropping soon, Lead Conflict. And thank you once again for tuning into the podcast.